Welcome back, it's Lachey Tree L. Let's get it popping with wig class 180. I'm going to be showing you how to dye the roots without damaging the lace. Make sure you turn on your notifications and you subscribe, hunty. Yes. So I did start with 613 hair and a matching frontal. Now this is permanent natural black dye by CLAIROL. I'm sorry I didn't zoom in on it, but it is permanent dye. I'm going to mix, I had about a half an ounce of this left in the bottle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix this with 2 ounces of 30 developer. Now it's not going to make it black, it's going to make it like a really dark brown. A lot more natural than just black. So this is a permanent color. I'm going to go ahead and mix all of the contents and everything together. Now that's nice, thick, and creamy how I want it to be. Go ahead and make sure this frontal is pinned all the way down. You don't want anything moving. I don't need none of this stuff moving while I'm trying to work. Okay, hunty. So what I just went to go do, I just went to go grab my clips and my comb off my other table. So you want to start pinning this off in really small sections. And I'm not using the color brush. I'm using a small thin tooth comb. I'm going to take the dye and I'm going to very lightly comb this through. You want to make sure you are very careful with combing this through. You don't want to stain the lace. As we all know, black stains the lace a lot worse than most colors, and it will not be able to blend in with your scalp or your client's scalp properly if the lace is no longer transparent or the roots are not transparent. So as you see, it is still a really light gray color. Over time it's going to darken up. Now if you want, you can let the color sit there and let them change the proper color, but I mean it's going to turn dark anyway, so I just started working. So I'm trying to get this as close to the lace as possible without putting any of this color on here. My main trick that I like to do as I'm doing this is I'll put the color on the comb I'll put the color on the comb and then I'll put the color onto the hair about 3/4 of an inch away from the lace, and then I'll start working the color downward. So I'm going to go ahead and show you that right here. So I'm putting it away from the lace. Putting it away from the lace, and then I'm working it downward. I'm working it to the lace. Just because, like I said, you don't want any globs on here whatsoever. And using this fine tooth comb allows you to get all the way to the roots without actually coloring the knots. And I'm also taking a clean rat tail comb, and I'm combing a little bit into the dye. I'm combing the edges of the dye and bringing that down into the hair to make these dark roots a lot more natural instead of just a big glob of black on there. So you want to have those colors cascading down into the blonde just a tiny bit, with different variations of black running down into the blonde. Not like literally running down into the blonde, but you'll be able to see what I'm talking about at the end. I'll be able to show you once I'm pretty much done. But if you ever bought a 613 frontal with dark roots, and you can pretty much see that color is not just splashed onto the roots. It's pretty much very natural looking, as if you had blonde hair and your hair grew out. And you had natural dark roots and your hair grew out. So we want to pretty much make it look like that. You don't want to just slap it on there in a color block fashion. You want to make sure that it's really, really natural. So I'm going to go ahead and finish doing the rest of this, and you can watch me work. Okay, yeah. Now, as I said before, you want to make sure you're doing this in very, very small sections. And this does take a lot of time and patience. It took me about a little bit over an hour to complete this task. But to be honest, it's very, very well worth it because you won't stain the lace. You'll barely touch any of the knots if you use this method. I don't think that I got any of the knots dark on this. I don't believe so. So I'm all done. I'm going to let this sit on here for at least about another 30 minutes because I want the other side to process as long as I want the right side to process as long as the left side did. So I did wash this out. And I'm going to put this on high low heat. And I'm going to go ahead and blow dry this all the way through. You don't want this black sitting here with this blonde because although it's washed all the way out and I did use Color Protect shampoo, you just still don't want it to be sitting on there while it's wet to mess up any of your perfection that you just did. You don't want any of your good efforts going to waste. So I'm going to go ahead and blow dry this, and then I'll show you guys what it looks like on top of the lace and up under the lace once I'm done. Now that everything's all dry, I'll part this a little bit, and you can clearly see the lace all the way through. Don't have any dark spots. And let's zoom in on the underside. Yes, hunty. Yes, it's no stains whatsoever. I'm going to go ahead and pick up my mesh down cap. I'm going to put my cap onto the blockhead. And this is a 22-inch blockhead. My client had a average head size. So I'm going to put the top. I'm going to pin this front part on the 0. And I'm going to pull the back down to about a 13. Now, you guys, when you're measuring your caps to the proper head size, universal rules apply. So you, like I said, you want to make sure that you have that chart handy. Now, well, I'm going to interrupt really, really quick. But as you can see, I did pull that down about an inch just because I wanted the caps to be fully stretched so that it's not bulking up under the frontal. But universal rules apply when you're pinning and you're measuring. You want to make sure that you have that chart on hand. Here's my frontal. You want to make sure that you have that chart on hand so that you can know the proper measurements that you have, that you need for either you or your client. So I'm going to pull this frontal down about 3/4 of an inch in front of this cap. I'm going to pin this down really, really nice and flat. So I don't like to put one pin in the front. I'll put two, one on the left side and one on the right side, really, really close together so that this frontal is not moving or tugging from one side to the other. I did pin it in the back of the frontal, and I'm going to go ahead and lay this frontal really, really flat to this canvas head and to this cap, and I'm going to pin it on the end of the frontal to the cap. preferably to the band. So in addition to pinning the frontal down to the cap, I'm going to also pin the frontal down onto the canvas head. Because like I said, I want this to lay really, really flat. I don't want this frontal moving as I'm going to sew it down in a minute. So you don't have to have too many pins on here. I only use about 6. 2 at the top, 1 on each corner, and then 1 in the middle of both those parts. So 1 in the middle on the right, 1 in the middle on the left. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and part this hair. It doesn't have to be a even part, but I'm going to part the hair as I'm going to braid it down. Now you can braid the hair or pin it out of the way with clips. I like to braid mine down just because it keeps all of the hair from getting messed up as I'm sewing it on the frontal. If you don't pin it out the way properly, or if you don't braid it, your hair will get frizzy and tangled and stuck into your machine as you are working with it on the sewing machine. So as I said, I'm going to go ahead and braid 2 pigtails down each side of this frontal because like I said, I want my hair to be out of the way. Okay. Now I am using this cream thread. I'm going to take this thread because it's really, really thin. And I'm not going to double it. I'm going to triple this thread. I wanted to make it as thick as the thread that you use for like sew-ins and whatnot. And I'm doing it specifically because it's too thin for one string by itself for you just to double it once. It's just not durable enough. It's really, really great to use on the sewing machine, but trying to use it by hand, it'll break. So I'm going to thread my needle. And as you see, it's really, really thick. It's going to make sure that this thread does not break as I'm sewing it through the frontal. Now, I do sew my frontal down in 2 parts. You can watch that in any of my earlier videos. Actually, I'll put the frontal placement video at the top, and that explains how I do that task. So you can go ahead and click the link at the top, and then you can see how I do that. Now I did choose cream thread because I'm going to be using lighter colors in a later video. I'm going to be coloring this hair. So stay tuned, hunty. Turn on your notifications, all right? So my next task is always to cut off the excess cap. I always do this after sewing my frontal down, and I do sew it onto the sewing machine before I cut off the excess cap. I'll show you that in WIG class 119. But for any of you who have watched any of my earlier videos, yes, you know I do sew it down by hand and by sewing machine to make sure that it is 100% secure to that cap. So yeah, hunty, once all of the tracks are on here, she'll be able to lay flat to this canvas. And she'll be good to go, hunty, okay? Yes. Now, babes, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you, babes, so much. I love you, babes, so much. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't. Turn on your notifications. I do have weekly uploads, and follow me on social media. Thanks for watching, babes. Bye. See you next time.